and I'm Lisa Briggs. And today I have with me Laurie Sund. And Laurie, why don't you tell a little bit about what you do here at the Briggs Company? You have a very cool job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I am the green goods buyer. I buy all the plant material except for the trees and shrubs.
Okay.
So that includes house plants, seeds and bulbs, annuals and perennials.
Right.
And I also do all the pottery, which
Yes.
is really fun.
And you also help with the consult on some of the garden art, and you have your fingers in a lot of pies.
Yes, when they let me.
Yes. And Laurie has been here a really long time. We won't say how many years, but she said she was born here. So she has a ton of experience. And so since Laurie is the green goods buyer, and one of the things that is really in trend right now is bulb planting. And now that we've had a couple of frosts, I didn't personally on the near west side of Madison, but Laurie did, and a lot of outlying areas had frost. It's time to plant spring blooming bulbs. So for all of you who come in the spring and you want to know if we have tulips and daffodils available, we don't then, but we do now. So Laurie, why don't you start by telling us what is a bulb? What constitutes a bulb?
Bulbs are super cool. It's like a complete plant in a all wrapped up in a cute little package.
So
clean and tidy.
Yeah, so it's got food for the plant, and it's got the bud and the flower bud, and a lot of the spring blooming bulbs need what we call a chill period, which is why we plant them now instead of planting them in spring.
It's actually a modified storage structure.
There you go.
Of a plant. So the stem is inside, the flower buds for the next blooming time are inside, and then it wrapped all around that are modified leaves, fleshy leaves, and then little root nodules so the roots can come out the bottom.
And I read once that you can tell a bulb from other storage things like dahlias or begonias or iris, our rhizomes. They're all sort of storage things. But true bulbs, if you slice it in half, you can see the entire plant inside of it. You can see the stems inside. So
it looks like an onion.
Yes,
on the
and
inside.
onions are bulbs.
Yes, that's the classic bulb.
Yes. So what are your favorite bulbs? What should we be planting this year that we maybe have not planted before?
Yeah, I love the tiny little early bulbs.
Okay.
That's the best thing after a long winter to see those coming up. So that would be crocus, snowdrops, scilla, pushkinia, anything like that. But I also like the big, tall, late tulips with the big, strong stems and the huge kind of blousy flowers.
Yeah. I like fritillaria myself. I think they look really cool.
They're stinky though.
They're a little stinky, but they keep squirrels away and rabbits away because they're stinky.
Yes.
So they don't eat them. So they're kind of good to plant with that kind of thing. So I know a lot of people will talk about with their bulbs that they have problems with squirrels and rabbits eating the flowers or digging up the bulb. So we talked last week a little bit about some strategies. What tips do you have for keeping them safe from varmints?
I think soaking them in Repel-Zol is one of the best things you can do, which is a liquid.
Right, right. You use the liquid, not the granular, right?
Right.
Some things like I know that daffodils, for instance, are a little bit toxic, so they won't eat daffodils.
They usually don't bother those. They usually don't bother alliums.
Right, because they're
or fritillaria
or fritz because they're stinky. Yeah. And then so when you're planting, what tips do you have for planting?
Well, you brought up fritillaria, and that's kind of an unusual looking bulb because it's got spaces in between the leaf scales, the bulb scales, and in a really wet fall or wet spring, water can get inside those and actually rot the bulb. So they recommend to plant fritillaria that's got all those spaces in there on its side.
Okay.
And then any excess water will drain away.
Yeah.
And if if anyone is uncertain about which way to plant a bulb, which end goes up, you can always plant them sideways, and the roots will know which way to go,
And the stem
and
will
the
know which
stem
way to
will
go.
know which
I
way to
remember
go.
you came back when you went to Holland years ago on a buying trip. And didn't they say that they just push them off the backs of the truck?
Oh
And
yeah,
really
they
don't
don't
pay any
plant.
attention to how
Yeah,
they're planted. So
no,
the bulbs
no.
can figure it out.
The bulbs, no.
And so we've got a question from Victoria. Victoria wants to know how far down she should trim her new rose bush. So Victoria, I would say for rose bushes, I would leave them until next spring. If you bought it from us, it's a hardy rose. You're going to have some dieback depending on how strong the winter is, and so you might as well wait and get that dieback from what you have now versus what you would have if you cut it back now. And also, pruning at this time of year will sometimes spur some new growth, and you don't want the plant to do that. You want it to go dormant. And so, yeah, just leave it alone. And then in the spring, when the buds start to come out and you see about a half an inch of new growth, you can trim back anything that's dead then. And you can also prune back anything that, sometimes you'll get some crazy stems that'll be 3 feet long. You can trim those back then too. So, is Taylor showing us another
Nope,
question?
sorry.
Sorry. Taylor made an arm motion and we thought there was a question. So, Laurie, when so you talked about how if you're in doubt, plant it on its side. So I know that there are like old wives' tales about how deep to plant. So, how deep should we be planting bulbs?
Rule of thumb is 2 to 3 times the diameter of the bulb.
Okay.
So if you have a 1-inch diameter bulb, I'd go at least 3 inches.
Yeah.
And that's the top of the bulb that's 3 inches below the surface.
Okay. And bulb fertilizer, so some bone meal or some bulb booster is a really good thing to do.
Always a good idea.
Yes, because that'll get the roots going this winter and get them established.
Yep, and a little deeper is better than too shallow.
Right.
If you're a little too deep, your bulbs will just bloom a little bit later.
Yeah.
In the spring.
We've got a question. Kim Ravish. That's a name we know. So Kim wants to know, after she plants her fall bulbs, is there anything that she needs to do? And when can she expect to see them pop in the spring?
You would want to continue watering.
Yes.
If the weather is dry, and you'd want to do that until the ground freezes, which is usually about Thanksgiving. You might want to protect from critters if you think you have a lot of mice or voles. You might want to put hardware cloth, or I guess after they're planted, you can't soak them in animal repellent, so
Right.
you could put a mechanical barrier of
Yeah,
some
you can
sort.
use chicken wire. You can put it right, if you're doing in drifts, you could do it right on the ground and then put mulch on top, and they'll come up through the holes in the chicken wire.
Yeah. And then as far as when you can see them in the spring, that all depends on the weather and what kind of bulb that you've planted.
Yeah, because you could have like winter aconite that might come up
Maybe in
late-
March.
Yeah, late February, early March,
Yeah.
all the way to what's the latest? Well, the allium, there are summer alliums, but of the spring blooming bulbs, like the Triumph tulips are one of the last ones, and
Well,
I think
alliums would be
and alliums
really
would
late,
be
too.
really late too.
Yeah. A few years ago, we had a super cold, wet spring, and all of my bulbs bloomed at the same time, about middle of May. The super early ones and the late ones all just did it
I
at
always
the
think
same
it's
time.
really funny because in the spring I have like a sequence of bloom, like for shrubs. That's my specialty.
That's your plan anyway.
Right. But some years you'll get some really crazy combinations. Like you'll have PGM rhododendrons will be blooming with forsythia, which no one would ever want to do on purpose because they look so weird together. But sometimes that just happens. Mother Nature, she's pretty tricky.
Got another one. I'll read this one because
Okay.
it's a little bit longer. I just received new peony bare roots. I'm unable to plant them in my new garden as it is under renovation and isn't scheduled to be completed until next month. Can I transplant them into pots and overwinter them in my garage?
What do you think, Laurie?
If your garage doesn't have wild temperature swings,
Right.
I think
so-
that would be a good thing to do.
Yes. So you'd want to put it where it gets cold,
Right.
But
Or even a really chilly basement
yes,
would be fine.
yeah. And the tricky thing with peonies is that you can't have those eyes. If you have bare root peonies, you'll have the root structure, the bulb structure, and then there'll be like little pink bumps. Those are the eyes. Those are the growth for next year. That needs to be like less than 2 inches below the surface of the soil.
I would think you would just want to reset them in the
Completely.
spring when you plant them.
What if they do some growth though? What if we have like and there's some root growth in there in the pots?
That shouldn't
Okay.
bother anything.
Okay.
They're hardy.
Yeah, so just
Peonies
make
are
sure
tough.
that when you replant that you get them at the right depth.
Yeah.
Otherwise they'll grow like gangbusters, but they won't flower.
If
And
they're
that
too
would be a
deep,
shame.
that's correct.
Because
Yeah.
peonies are one of my absolute favorites.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I have a collection.
Yeah.
You have to come over and look.
On the garden tour.
They won't be blooming then though. That's not till July.
Oh, that's right.
I know. So I have to think
Yeah.
anything that I plant in my garden next spring.
For
I have to
July.
think about things that are blooming in July. Because yeah, my house is going to be on the garden tour, the overnight
Yeah.
garden tour. So I'm very excited. It's on my bucket list.
Then you're into cones. Well, you have shade.
I have shade, and I have a Japanesque garden. So I'm sort of my
Yes.
palette is limited for sure. And I have black walnuts next door. So I have many constrictions.
Yes, you do.
Another
Okay.
one that's a long one, so I'll
Okay.
read. I've had powdery mildew in my pumpkin patch the last 2 years. This year I had not a single pumpkin and I trashed all the powdery leaves and stems. Is there something I can do to the soil over the winter to keep this from happening again next year? Can you suggest what to plant there next year that is not pumpkins? This plot gets 50% sun.
Okay.
Well, that's part of the problem.
Yes. Okay. So I'm a big believer, not now because I have a small shady yard, but when I did have a big garden, in crop rotation. So if you have your pumpkins in this spot one year, you want to move them to this spot
Mm-hmm.
the second year, and the third year you want to put them in another spot. So then you can rotate.
Right.
Same thing, because a lot of diseases like that are specific for tomatoes will
Or
winter
staying
in the
in the
soil,
soil.
stay in the soil, and that means anything in the tomato family. So tomatoes, peppers, rutabaga.
And if it's not full sun, they might want to try some lettuce or greens that like
Yes.
cooler temps or
I don't know. I know that you can use Revitalize as a drench, but I don't know how effective it is against powdery mildew. Powdery mildew's got a really sophisticated overwintering structure. I would say, Richard, that if you've taken your stuff out, I wouldn't put it in your own home compost. I would put it out for the city because your home pile probably doesn't get warm enough or hot enough to kill off powdery mildew. But the city has massive, big piles, and so it probably does get warm enough. And then I would certainly
you do
kind of-
preventive spraying.
Right, I was going to say you should preventatively spray with a good organic fungicide, and there are several things that are available from
Yes.
Revitalize. So it's like a bio fungicide to copper. So you have lots of choices.
Mhm.
But if you know that you have it around, I would definitely kind of err on the side of caution. But probably one of the reasons you don't have pumpkins is if you're not getting like a full solid 8 hours of sun, that's not enough light for them.
Yeah, or heat.
Or heat too, yeah.
Yeah. It really wasn't that hot this summer either.
No, it wasn't. Lots of tomatoes are on the vine. I think people who had hot peppers maybe didn't get a ton of hot peppers.
Yeah.
So I did forget at the beginning that we wanted to talk a little bit about some business, which I skipped, and I'm really sorry. But we did. The person who won the gift card from last year is Ann Olson. So Ann, pardon?
Last week.
Oh, last week. Sorry, last week. Is Ann Olson. So Ann Taylor will send you a reminder via Facebook, but to come into the store and pick up your $10 gift card. And if you're interested in winning a gift card, then what you have to do is comment. So all the people have commented so far, or you can like us or share the video. And that also goes for tonight. If you're watching this after the fact when we're not live, you can also ask a question then. And if we don't get it answered tonight, we will certainly get to it in the morning. And then you'll be eligible for a gift card, which we will announce next week. So, and we have a couple other things going on in the store that you can win gift cards. It's always fun this time of year as we get into Christmas. We have Charlie Shortino's giant pumpkins, plural, are here. And the biggest one, you can guess the weight. And it's Price is Right rules, so closest without going over. You could win a $100 gift card, and I think we're going to go take that till close to Halloween. And we've got a little sort of photo set up with the pumpkins. And if you want to take your photo of you or your family with the pumpkins and then post it on social media and tag us, so either Facebook or Instagram, your choice, that would put you in the running for a randomly chosen $50 gift card. So that's
if you've
always
never
fun.
been up close and personal with the giant pumpkin, they're
It's kind
great.
of they're wild. They're
great.
not
Yeah.
like anything that you think of. It's not like a perfect pumpkin that's giant. It's like a weird color. They're sort of peachy and they're sort of squashed and
Yeah.
misshapen. They're really funny looking.
Yeah.
But they're kind of cool. So you should come and take a look at them. So Laurie, to wrap this up, anything else that you want to say about bulbs for this? Any words of wisdom?
If you're thinking about planting bulbs, I would get them soon because it seems to be a popular thing.
I think people are spending a lot of extra time this year in their yards doing things. So yeah. So come on in, and we've got a really good selection still of all the regular stuff. I think the only thing I saw that we were sold out of are those like giant, big as your head allium.
Well, I think there's actually
get
a few
some more?
of those.
Excellent. And then I would
And don't angst about planting bulbs. I
Okay.
usually just dig one good sized hole,
Throw
throw a
'em in
whole
there?
bunch in there, quickly, put the soil
yeah, I
back
like
in
to
place.
I like
and-
to dig like not a trench exactly, but sort of a shape. That's maybe 4 or 5 inches deep, and then throw them in there.
Mhm.
And then wherever they land, then just cover them up.
Yeah.
So it works out.
Yeah.
They look more natural that way. And you can mix them up. Don't have to plant all your tulips with tulips. You can sort of
for sure.
Yeah, and you can have stuff like if we said you can have stuff that blooms really early to really late. So one more
Or you
question
can mix
for you.
small bulbs and large bulbs, put the large bulbs deeper and the
And then
smaller
smaller on
bulbs a
top,
little
yep,
bit above
yep.
them.
And I used to put, when I had a yard with a lawn, I used to put some of those minor bulbs with the real grassy foliage in my lawn.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And then by the time they were done flowering, then it was time to mow the lawn, and the foliage just sort of blended in with the grass. So that was really cool. We've got a question.
Yep.
So
He'd like to know about geranium plants that would be his second year. That he'd like to keep them for a third when he does trim it down and then bring it into the house.
So I
any
assume-
suggestion? Yeah.
So I assume we're talking about annual geraniums. So let's just go with that.
That would be in a container.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to trim it back. I let mine get bigger and bigger. If you need to trim it back, you can do it now. Anytime is fine.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind if you're cutting back a lot of the leaves, you'll need to reduce your watering because there's just not as much foliage using the water anymore.
And
And
a
the
lot of-
days are shorter.
Yeah. And so a lot of plants will go a little bit dormant anyway and use less water. So just
Mhm.
make sure that you're not overwatering.
Yep. And I keep mine growing for the winter. Some people try to store them dormant. So
Right.
I'm not sure what this person is doing.
Yeah. And you'd have to have pretty high light.
As much sun as
Yes.
possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I've got one more bulb question for you. It's not something that we have in yet, but a lot of people have started to ask. So when are the paper whites going to be here?
Actually, we have some now.
Ooh.
Not the mass quantities.
Okay.
But next week we'll start getting those.
And amaryllis.
also next week for amaryllis.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Do you know how many varieties we're going to get? Last year we had like
Oh.
40.
Yeah, at least that many.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So everything from the big classic, like Red Lion, lots of bicolors, I'm assuming.
Yep, to some minis and some species types like the papilio with
Okay.
the burgundy stripes.
Yeah. Any of those crazy sort of spidery shaped ones?
Yep, there'll be some of those.
Excellent.
Some doubles, some huge singles. Yeah.
If you've never planted amaryllis before, they're really fun. So it's
And a
great-
no-brainer. It's
Yeah.
so easy.
It is really easy. Come
Yeah.
on in. We've got all kinds of handouts that we can give you and talk you through the planting procedure. They're super easy and they're really, really satisfying.
Yeah, they're all set to go.
Yeah, because they've all been cold chilled. So they're ready to go.
They're ready.
Yeah. Oh, and if we're going to talk about amaryllis for a minute, if you have amaryllis that you had last year and you had them in pots, so what should you be doing to? Because now is the time if you want flowers even close to the holidays.
Oh, yeah, you should have been droughting them,
Okay.
which means not watering them. Usually you would start that. I would start mine late August, early
Okay.
September, and let them go for at least 3 months, bone dry.
Okay.
And then you would repot them and start them up again, and that's when they should rebloom.
So some people will take them out of the pots completely. That counts as the droughting part, right?
Yes.
And then repotting, or you can just
Yes.
keep them in the pots droughted. And
But
then,
I think it takes longer than for them to dry down. So if you take them out of the pot, that's a little bit quicker.
right.
They're drying faster.
Yeah. So you just cut the roots back and kind of carefully take the soil off.
I always just
You
left
leave
the
your
roots.
Okay.
Because sometimes the roots persist, and then you're that far ahead
Okay.
for the next go around.
Right. And I did have a problem with mine last year. I planted a whole bunch and they were really slow. And Matt Weaver told me that my house was too cold, which is true.
Oh
And
yes.
so I put them in my utility room. So amaryllis like a little heat to get started. So
Mhm.
if you're running a little behind as far as getting them to bloom for Christmas or for New Year's, and they haven't started the flower shoots yet, put them in
Put 'em
a warm
someplace
place.
warm, like on top of a fridge
Right.
is good because the heat from the fridge comes up the back and over
Yeah.
the top.
And they don't need a lot of light until they actually emerge through the bulb.
Correct.
Yeah, so they don't.
Yep.
So my utility room has no light, so but it didn't matter. But it's the warmest place in the house.
And don't keep watering to make it grow. If it's not going to grow,
Yes.
it's on its own schedule. Because if you overwater, then you'll have trouble.
So thank you everybody for joining us today, and we will see you next Tuesday at 4:00 when I think the plan is that we're going to talk to Gloria, who is our furniture buyer, and we're going to talk about what to do with your outdoor furniture, how to clean it, how to take care of it. So store up those questions, and she's got a lot of information about all the different materials. And if you're watching this after the fact, please, like I said, comment, share, or like us, and don't forget you'll be in the running for that $10 gift card.